Cool. So as we're kind of getting started, does anyone want to tell the tale of spring break? Anything good? Didn't you go somewhere? Yeah? Oh, somebody else in the class I'm thinking about went to Paris or something. Yeah, I definitely did not go to Paris. Um, well, just because like I feel like it's a fun thing to do, I'll show you kind of some of the stuff that I worked on over spring break. Because for most of us who teach, spring break is kind of a opportunity for us to catch up on other stuff. So I've been kind of working through this project for over a year now. I think I showed you all like on the first day of class, like this video game that I'm working on. And so the whole idea of the video game is that you experience the game with the controller, but you also like have a physical environment that you sit in with objects from the game space, so there's going to be all of these sort of like little objects displayed in the gallery space. And then I started cutting these, cutting furniture for the space. So I'm making my own furniture, which I've never done before. That's a lie. One time I made a horse carriage and I upholstered the bench. And so that's like, I have like just enough upholstery knowledge to be dangerous. So I'm making this like landscape of upholstered objects that they're going to be upholstered. Hopefully, I'm getting the fabric samples soon. I'm hoping that it's going to be some kind of like crushed velvet, like, and then I'll tuft it, so it'll be like really traditional, but like really geometric and, kind of crazy. So they're going to be like stepped like this, and I'm going one level higher. And then this is like a footstool that embeds into the whole thing. So there'll be like probably like the level of like area that I'm looking about is about from here back to the corner, just filled with these things. And so you can come in as a user, and like stretch out or maybe reconfigure the space and get it to where you need it to be. So that was my spring break, and it's good to get some things done. One thing that I've found, especially working with large projects, is that it's a good idea for me to set small deadlines for myself. Like I need to get the chairs done, or I need to get this thing done, because if I don't do that, it just takes away all of my joy in like feeling like I've accomplished something. So yeah, I think definitely that idea of like setting small goals is super important when you're working on a project that takes a couple years to finish. So yeah, that was good. And so today, I thought that I would talk you through the examples that I have put on the art309.wisc.edu. So I thought I would talk through these examples. I also have a bunch of links on the course website that if we have time, we can look at a few of them. Usually those links are like, this might be interesting to you. It's definitely not posted as you must know this or else. It really is, I post those links because I think they'll be relevant to some people, but maybe not to everybody, depending on what your project is and what you're doing. So I guess if anybody also has any sort of like problem solve questions about HTML or CSS, like I'm happy to field those in the next, like either today or in the next week. Also, before I forget, here, I have one right here. Oh yeah, no, it's fine. I'm the same way. It's like if I have a pen or a pencil, like it's like a lucky day. Yeah. like 12 years ago, and everything was on paper still. And now it's like, people are still using paper, and it's like hardly any, you know, hardly any. Okay, so I think we have that taken care of. So there's two examples that I wanted to kind of talk through. And I think when we do this, I'm going to kind of like maybe break them a little bit, like try to, you know, expand on them a little bit interactively. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I download this. Yep. And then I'm just going to go ahead and download the second one as well, just to make sure that I have that. Thank you so much. And then those should be just, you know, waiting for me in my downloads folder. Looks like I have multiple versions of these, so I'm gonna delete stuff a little bit. All righty. Well, in any case, there's a couple of these. So I'm gonna go ahead and like get them out of my downloads folder and just like into a more reasonable place. So I think to do that, I'm just gonna make a thing in our class folder. So I have a folder in here called webroot, but that is really that kind of contains the sort of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for our course website. So for experimental purposes, I'm just creating a second directory that isn't going to kind of mess with that. And so at this point, I should be able to grab these and get them in there. So I have the two zip files that I downloaded off the website, and I think, you know, basically I'm just going to unzip them. I'm going to unzip them both now just because it's easier to do that. And I'm going to set up some of my view options the way that I like them. Yeah, so I'm going to start with the basic Canvas example. And basically what I'm going to want to do is that I would like to open all of these up in Sublime. Now there is a way. There is a way in Sublime to basically open up the entire little directory. And when you do that, it will come in with the files set up as tabs. So I'm just navigating to that folder. And yeah, if I open up the basic Canvas folder in Sublime, it will kind of do it like this, where you have the multiple files kind of set up on the sidebar, which if I'm really working on like a project, that is highly useful because it kind of just like corrals everything together for you. So things are looking pretty simple right now as far as this code goes. You know, the HTML is right now, the HTML is kind of doing most of the heavy lifting. And then the P5 sketch is doing a lot of the graphics. So let me just bring up this example in the web browser. Right, so this is indeed what we have. So there's a couple of things that I would draw your attention to. One is that it appears that we have a Google Web font that's being used in here. And so if we go over to the style page, the styles page, you should be able to see You know, actually, it looks like there is no reference to a Google Web font. This is just probably what it looks like at the at that level. It's a little curious. It really looks like a web font to me. Let me figure this out for a second. So I'm just looking through here. It looks like maybe the web font might be kind of cached on my browser. So maybe now would be a good time to check and see if everyone remembers how to disable the caching on your browser, which is a really good thing to do. In fact, I would say you probably need to do it if you're developing something. So in order to do that, first of all, I'm using Chrome. I know that I talked to a few of you in the last week, and I kind of individually advised people to use Chrome. Chrome is vastly superior to other web browsers, particularly for web development. So there's two reasons that I would say that you should probably use Chrome over any other web browser. One is that Chrome does a really good job of displaying the content on your web page according to the way it should, based on all the code standards and stuff. And then the second reason I think you should use Chrome over other web browsers is that it has this function called the developer tools. So if you go up here to view and then developer tools, it's going to show you like a variety of options for, you know, putting together this page. And it does seem like the disable cache is already enabled. So that is specifically this little checkbox, which you would get to by going to the network tab here. You can really benefit from having that selected. So basically that takes care of the problem where you're constantly looking at an old version of your website. But apparently that's not our issue right at this moment. Some other tabs that I really like on this that I use frequently would be the Elements tab. So in the Elements tab, that's a really good tool for debugging HTML. And then there's also the console tool. So you can use this console and you can actually write to it from your JavaScript, from your P5 JavaScript. So if you were kind of missing that feedback of being able to deal with the console, it's actually P5.js is printing kind of as we speak. So if I wanted to go into Sublime and let's say go over here to this sketch one, sorry, I've got a couple things open here. If I wanted to go to this part of the app, there should be a pre-existing, like a print right here, a print function, print I. And you can see that I is printing out over here in this console thing. And so that is particularly is a really great, reason to use Chrome. So I don't think we really need to use the console at this moment, but that's definitely something that I wanted to talk with you about. So if we go to the basic canvas.html page, you can see that there's these references to the script that we need to power the JavaScript. So this is really like a reference to the sort of processing P5 Bible. And then down here, the second reference is a reference to our actual sketch. And it looks like if you go to the actual sketch, there's the create canvas function. And it looks like here, in this case, we're using like a discrete canvas size for the P5 object, right? So you can see here, it looks like 400, 400. So I could make it a little bit bigger if I wanted to. I'll make it big in a way that kind of makes sure that we can see it. So if I just change the canvas size, could see here, it looks like nothing happened. That's interesting. So that makes me wonder if maybe the page is still caching for some reason. So I'm gonna do like the most basic and obvious thing that I can think of, which is to literally type some HTML in the HTML page and see if it sort of, if it displays it. So okay, so that's so hilarious, y'all. So I just made like a very like a very common student mistake. Does anybody have any idea what my mistake was? It's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. So basically, what happened is, I was trying to troubleshoot this page based on the online version. And I'm working on the version that's on my hard drive. And I just did not even see the address in the address bar, but I did see it just now, so that's good. So yeah, so real quickly, I'm just gonna navigate to that file that we're actually working on right now. And don't forget, people are sometimes surprised to learn this, but you can open a file in Chrome. Hey, and there's our larger window. So you might notice, it looks like the sketch is like, oh my God, it hurts so much. Like just running those extra polygons is like killing the web browser right now. And so in order to do that, I think we have a couple of options. We could go ahead and make our kind of object smaller, or we could consider maybe using fewer primitives in the design. So right now we increased the screen size to 800 by 800, and the way that I have the code set up, it basically fills the window, right? So it's just generating more forms. So I don't know, I feel like we could probably try generating fewer forms. Guess we could do that. So probably this incrementer, I would add to the increment to basically cut the forms in half, or the number of forms in half. And hopefully, now that I am working on the right part of the code, this will refresh nicely. So one thing I'm just gonna check real quickly is, I'm gonna check and make sure that I saved this. Geez Louise. So this seems like it's kind of fully ready to like take down my laptop. I'm feeling not great about how things are happening right now. So I'm gonna try to take the screen, the window size down a little bit. Man, this can, like, my laptop really hates this right now. Um, hmm. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I think that was probably just a case of like my computer not wanting to process all this stuff. Um, so just to kind of like, sorry that I have to do this right now, but I'm going to just navigate through here and get some of my applications. I might have lots of crazy applications open. So I'm just gonna go through here and get rid of a few. So it should only take me a second. Just have to save this. Let's see. Okay, still feeling pretty laggy here. So I'm gonna take a couple more seconds to just close some other apps here. Of course, I hate closing applications. So I'm a little bit surprised that this is becoming kind of a problem because I did spend some time over the weekend actually restarting my computer. So, which I don't do like all the time. So I'm almost curious if maybe it's like Chrome has kind of like is having some sort of like brain freeze. So I think one thing I'm going to do is just close out of that and try to open the file in a new tab and see if it behaves a little bit better. Huh. So let me try a couple of other things. I did want to get through some stuff today, so that's kind of I'm kind of bummed out. So I think that like I'm almost certainly pretty certain that the only thing that I can do right at this moment to help with this situation is maybe to restart my computer. So that's gonna take a couple seconds and I'm gonna have to pause the recording, unfortunately. Yeah, but I think that's the thing to do. So stay tuned, folks. Okay, so I'm gonna just end this recording and all right, we're almost there. Okay, everybody, I think I am reborn. With a different sketch. Well, it's the same sketch, but with a different, instance on the web browser. It seems to be fully cured. So definitely, I think that if we did want to, increase the size of the object, that should under normal circumstances, that shouldn't be a problem. So I'm just going to bump this back up to 800 by 800. And let's see real quickly. Yeah, as predicted, it's totally fine. So yeah, that's definitely a case of like, it wasn't the code, it was me. So it's always, I guess, maybe slightly helpful to, know kind of what steps to take if that happens. It honestly, that's not something that has happened to me very often, but I think when Chrome sometimes like kind of eats too much JavaScript, like it can sometimes get a little cranky. But it's been an extreme exception to the rule. Yeah.
Could you maybe talk about just for the PFAB web project assignment?
Yeah.
How your project should have more.
The link.
More HTML pages or multiple PFAB sketches.
Yeah.
Just how to be.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. That's on my list. Thank you. Yeah. So basically, like, what I was hoping for is that maybe we can use one of these example pages and just link it, show you how to do links. So basically, putting these example pages, here's the basic Canvas example. And, you know, that's kind of all set up right now. We can definitely play with it and expand it. I do think if you want, it might make sense for me to actually do that first, because I was probably gonna do some more like kind of exploratory things with the HTML. But definitely, I went ahead and put a little paragraph into the page that we're working from right now. So I am curious to see where that wound up. And it seems like it might have wound up nowhere. So that's just because right now I don't have scrolling enabled on the page, I think. So one thing I'm curious about, just because it doesn't look like I have any, so this is a really common problem that happens in HTML. So basically, like, I'm asking it to print the word pixel, and I'm using a tag called the p tag, which is basically just the paragraph tag. It's, you know, you put it around something that you want to have treated like a paragraph. And if you look at the sort of like how my page is, even if I zoom out on it to make sure I'm getting the entire thing, like, it doesn't seem like it's there, but I'm pretty sure that it is there. There it is. So that's like a fairly common problem where, like, you're trying to write HTML, you have a black background, and the default for HTML text is black. So we basically are going to have to just really quickly put a style in here for the p tag so that it turns it white. So here, if I go to the styles page, I can make a style for any tag. So because the p tag is a pre-existing tag, it can be, the syntax is exactly like the H1 or the list item. It's just specified as a p. And so right now, this is basically going to apply some of the same text styles, that it's making it white, and then it's also giving it a 200 pixel margin. So I'm going to save that because I just kind of missed on saving that. Hello. Save. And so now you can see my word here is like in kind of in a good place, you know, it's sort of like in with the rest of the type. Now there's actually another technique that you can use to kind of economize your CSS. So you can see right now that H1 LI, which is for list items, and then also now the p tag, essentially have the same information. And so if that's the case, you can address multiple tags within the same style. So this is just a way to sort of say, hey, I want all of these tags to be styled in this way. Okay, so let me go ahead and make sure that that takes. Okay. Also, in general, when you're developing, it's a really good idea to kind of keep the magnification at 100%. Not that you need it to stay that way. I mean, you can definitely troubleshoot your sort of web design at multiple magnifications. But if you're looking for a way to preview what your design might look like in other screen sizes, there's actually like a web extension for Chrome. It doesn't look like I have it installed right now. Oh yeah, I do. There's this window resizer extension for Chrome that basically can simulate like an iPad or a phone. And it can be super useful, especially if you're trying to design like a responsive website. So in any case, this word is right here and we can kind of come back to dealing with it in a second. So over here in the HTML, we have this word pixel. I just typed a random word. So if we wanted to be kind of like didactic about it, I could say something like page 1. And then I could have like a second P link for page 2. And I think that that's probably enough for me to kind of show you how that is going to work. So let's go ahead and go through the work of creating a different sort of instance of the page that we're looking at right now. And we'll link to it, okay? So basically, in order to do that, I have my 3 pages right now. There probably is room for some economy here because we have a style sheet. And if we're adding HTML pages to our style, this is actually kind of like the reason style sheets were invented, is so that you can have one style sheet and 500 HTML pages that link to it. So if you look at any like major website that has a lot of content on it, those styles are really usually driven by a single style sheet. And it's usually a very long and complex style sheet. But yeah, so that's the basic idea. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy these documents in the directory where we were working. So that's in here. I'll have to reset my view. So I think in the first case, I think I'm going to copy and paste the HTML page. And instead of calling it copy, I think I'm going to call it basic canvas 2. And then I think I'm going to make a different instance of the JavaScript file. So I'm just going to copy and paste the JavaScript file, and I'm going to give it a different name. I'm going to call it sketch2. And the style sheet, I think I'm going to leave right there and leave it as a single style sheet that can be shared amongst our HTML pages. Any questions? Yeah.
This Beeps module isn't posted. I don't know if that's
Oh shit, really?
fine that documents if we were downloaded. I don't know if that's what.
Find what document?
Or this basic.
Oh, so the code that we're working on right now is on, first of all, thank you so much for telling me that. Second of all, the code that we're working on right now is on the code from the basic from the website. So that's what I'm working through today. But yeah, let me go ahead and publish these modules. I mean, everything so funny. Everything should be published for the rest of the class at this point. Oh man, how about that? It was just this week. That's really odd. Wow. Okay, thanks for telling me that. So yeah, okay, so coming back to our sketches. So this actually is older. Here we are. So you can see like our sort of folder listing in Sublime has kind of maintained its correctness. So it added those new files. And I think before I go any further, I'm going to make some changes to Sketch2, mostly so that I can just know kind of what's happening. So I think I might try just like putting a colored light source on it. So RGB. So this should be blue light if I change that channel. And then it seems like we probably want the basic Canvas 2 page to link to sketch2.js. So that is good. So I'm sure you've figured this out by now if you're watching one of these videos. I'm terrible at remembering to save stuff. And then also as you increase the complexity of your website, you have to, save everything on the site. So Sublime does have a save all function, which is super useful, because it'll just save everything in the folder. Anyway, I think I'm probably ready to take a look at this. So we don't have a link to this page right now yet. So I should be able to just come in here and sort of like do it by, so this is like the brute force way of doing it. I'm just typing in the file name basically. And so it looks like we have some nice like yellow light here. We can definitely tell it's a distinct, version of this. So we're going to have to add like multiple links to kind of make this work, because it's web wise, it's not enough that from basic canvas.html, we can put a link into the next page. We'll put it here, but I think we should also put a link in basic Canvas 2 that goes back to the original page. Some people have kind of mixed feelings about that. They're like, oh, that's why, developers invented the back button. But I think that putting a link back to the page that you brought people from is just kind of it's nice. It's just nice. But it's not strictly necessary. So anyway, yeah, coming in here, if we want to link from basic Canvas 1 to basic Canvas 2, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and save this and make sure that it changes that text. So that's good. And then from here, I'm going to use the A tag to link. So the A tag looks like this. It's a kind of open caret, href, and then you can literally link to any URL. So we could link to www.google.com. And then this is super critical. People often forget to end the A tag. And I can tell you with complete certainty that that will wreak all kinds of havoc on your website, because the A styles are very particular and they don't probably belong on the rest of your page. So do make sure that you're using like an end tag here. And so like the sort of syntax for a lot of things that we're using, you're using the A tag. This is the attribute called href, which is literally just like a reference. And then your reference is your URL. And so that is basically any URL. That could be a local file. It could be, a web address for somebody else's website. It can be anything that creates a web page. And so I think we might do things a little bit in a kind of like, so first of all, if I wanted to, I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it. Okay. So this would be, okay. So this is the page that we're looking for. So the sort of wrong way to do it. And when I say that it's the wrong way to do it, I mean, it probably does work, but it's just not the most efficient or elegant way that you can do it. So basically you want to take this entire URL, which is a little bit long because it's on our local computer and it's, nested inside a bunch of folders. So you could put that in your HTML and it should work. But as you can see, it's a little unwieldy. So I'm going to go back to my original page here. And so you can see now the link is populated, We can talk about link styles. I will say that like the default styles for links are kind of one of the bane of like web people's existence. It's usually the first thing that people restyle when they get into, you know, their CSS. But we're gonna go ahead and leave it at default right now because I'm trying to kind of move through some stuff and we just don't have the time to like make it pretty, but trust me, we will. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on this, and as predicted, it does link reliably to this text. But I'm gonna show you something that is pretty powerful. Because these objects are in the same folder, we can actually go in here and just use the file name. So I see people using kind of the big gobbledygook pretty frequently as like, you know, a URL. And I mean, like, I guess there's, I mean, yeah, okay, actually, there is something technically wrong with it. What's cool about doing it this way, where you just feed the file name in, you have 0 changes to make it work on the server, okay? Because that's exactly how the folder structure is going to be the same on the server. So if you have the sort of long gobbledygook thing, then you'll have to sort of update all of your links to work on the server. So I would say by far, this is the right way to do it. But you know, I just kind of want you all to like know what works, what doesn't, and why. So yeah, now we've got this link to Basic Canvas 2. And the next sort of step for us to make this kind of, you know, straightforward for a user would be to add in so I'm going to write on basiccanvas2.html. Probably the best thing to do here is to just insert a link back to the page that we came from, which is page 1. And because I'm such a, you know, devotee of copy and paste, I'm just going to copy this and paste it here and just change it to Basic Canvas. And then I also don't want to leave off that A tag. And I just saved. And so at this point, we should be able to click this link and get back to our home. Okay. So I can kind of talk a little bit more at length about, you know, how to do links and stuff. I feel like that's sort of like the basic structure of how to do a link. I would definitely consider, like here, I would consider adding another HTML page. Just so we can kind of set up a little bit more complicated interaction here. So if I were to do that, I would probably make another one of these. Man, I'm just like hitting the wrong key on the keyboard, like there's no tomorrow. And turn that into Basic Canvas 3. And then I will also aim for
All of these, you just have one CSS file.
yeah, that's correct. So we'll start to get into like doing some things to that CSS file, because even if you want to have unique styles in your page, you would still you can still do that from a single HTML page with a single CSS sheet. Okay, so it looks like we have I'm just going to make sure that this file name is correct. I'm not 100% sure that it is. Okay, so let's see if I broke it. by doing that. Nope. Excellent. Okay, great. So, yeah, so, okay, I added, over here in, Sublime, I added, sketch3.js and also, basic canvas 3.html. And so, right now I'm kind of using basic canvas 2 and basic canvas 3 as like destination pages. So I'm not, you know, it's typical when you have a site that has a lot of links, you can sort of link forward and link back. Or, you know, you can adopt the model of sort of listing everything and allowing people to choose from multiple links. That is all really kind of about how you set it up. So right now I'm setting it up so that somebody goes to another page and then they can come back. But you can, if you want to, create links that go, you know, through the site instead. Maybe we could do that just to, you know, see how it's done. But let me go ahead and get this third page in here. So I think I'm going to do another color change. And so I'm just changing the color on sketch3.js. And also, strictly speaking, I noticed that something was a little bit amiss. So it's probably a good idea to change the canvas name based on, well, actually, I mean, strictly speaking, it doesn't matter, but it just kind of, you could use the sketch object to really be the thing that chooses from multiple sketches, but I think having the sketch name of the sketch that you actually want to view, in this case, we're looking at basic canvas 2, so it's sketch 2. That's probably a better way to set it up. So let me show you kind of what I'm talking about here. So here, in other words, I think you should update in the HTML, update this to sketch3.js, but you can leave this listed as sketch 1 because that's really defined in sketch 3, right? It's defined right here. So that should be fine. And it actually makes it a little bit easier for you if you don't have to update that reference. So in any case, yeah, so basic canvas 3 is set up. The color change right here was set up. And then the only thing that we have to do now is to basically get us to link 3. So I'll call that something like, maybe I'll call this page 2 just to be a little more consistent. Page 3, and then I can definitely steal this A tag from the previous site. And then here, I need to update this to a 3. So yeah, that should work pretty well. So right now we've got option 3 there. So this seems like it's like a little bit in the same zone color-wise. So I'm gonna just make sure that that's coded correctly. So I'm just checking to make sure that this reference is correct. And then, yeah, I guess another way for me to like really tell if it's linked to this would be to change the background color. It would be really obvious. And I'm gonna just quickly do a save all just to make sure that everything's kind of going according to plan. Yep, no, that's the right page. So that's good. So yeah, so basically kind of like we're in here with, you know, 3 separate pages that all go back to the original. You know, just to kind of show you what it would look like to set it up a little bit differently. If you were on, let's say, basic canvas 3, and you wanted to link something to, you know, page 2, we could definitely do that. So it's just really quite repetitive. So it's going to be exactly the same as the other pages. It's just that this one is maybe linking to page 2. And so from here, let's see, we can go to page 2, can go back, we can go to page 3, and from page 3, we can go to page 2. So basically what I did is I just added a link. And so because right now with your design, everything is in the same folder, it's gonna be really easy to make those links. If you start nesting folders, then it can be a little like nerve-wracking. But if your site is not too large, I would just throw everything into one folder, and then that makes it really easy. Does anybody have any sort of like questions or requests? So one thing I was thinking about is maybe we can try to like make this a little bit more aesthetic. So I think that right now the sort of links are, you know, they're a little, they're kind of ugly. So probably one of the first things that I would try to do in that case is to go to the link style. And so there should, hopefully, nope, there's no link styling as part of this CSS page. So the CSS page is particularly for this, these are kind of code examples. I tried to keep them as compact as possible. And then we can kind of expand on them in class. So one thing that you might want to think about is the A style. And so one of the most popular sort of styles to work with is the hover style. And I'm just going to Google this super quickly so I can get the syntax correct. So in general, when I want to get reference information about HTML or CSS, I always go to this W3 Schools website. It's just got all of the stuff laid out. And it's super helpful. So here's a list of like default settings that I can grab. And definitely, you know, a lot of people sort of poo-poo the idea of using defaults. But I think one of the cool things about creative web design is like how you maybe start with the defaults and move away from them. It just seems like one of the things that you can do. So for color, the way that they have set up the A tag is exactly how I would want to have it set up. So there's an A link active and a visited active, which is basically the kind of hover color. So for the hover color, I think it would make sense to make it white. And it just is going to accept like a hexadecimal white there. This cursor auto can say, if you like to make funky cursors, or you like to use funky cursors, that is a place where you could make that happen. Sometimes people like use funky cursors in a really like interesting and good way. So I don't want to say like never do them, but if I were making a website that I actually wanted people to look at and get information from, I would probably never use a decorative cursor. And then lastly, up here, this sort of first style for the A tag is the link or the visited, which is basically the kind of dormant value. And so I think for that, I'm going to just use like a light gray because I don't want it to be too much, or maybe a medium gray. So let's see, that's 666. Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, the text decoration. The underline, as I'm sure you all know, the underline is fairly ubiquitous for, you know, links. It's kind of a thing. You don't have to do it. You can put none on there. I personally am not a huge fan of underlines. But for maybe like a functional website, I would consider doing it. And so, yeah, now we're all set. So basically, if I go back to this page, and I just make sure that I save what I've done here on the A tag. So now we have some like little bit nicer pages. It does look like the hover color is not quite working. So I typically use a style specifically for the hover. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. There we go. So now we've got our hover color working. I guess for me, like in terms of link styling, believe it or not, like web professionals have written many books and articles about like what's the proper way to style a link. And the reason that they care so much about it is because the links are really like the gateway to experiencing the web page, you know, and getting the content. So some people say like having no underline is kind of like not very nice to your users or your viewers. That it certainly is not the most accessible way to do it. And then also, you know, there's a lot of sort of talk in design space about, you know, the hover and the hover color and whether you should have a hover background or a hover color. Honestly, yeah, I feel like those discussions become a lot more relevant when you're working for like, or when you're doing like professional work for something that's government funded or something that, you know, has to really kind of consider accessibility issues. But, you know, maybe for a sort of creative or aesthetic website, that's not really the most important thing. So I just kind of want you to know that there's like a really active conversation about those types of issues with regard to web design. So you want to see something cool? I'm going to go over to page 2 now. You want to know what's going to happen? Oh, our link styling carried through because we're linked. So that's pretty fun and definitely a good thing. So let me take a look at our module actually. Okay, so yep, that's about what I expected. Let's see. So let's talk about some other ways to kind of make this a little bit well, in fact, actually, I think we could probably sew this part up and we could work on the next one because I know we have a limited amount of time here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and navigate away from this into this. And I'm just going to open my thing up in Chrome. Probably the best way to like open your site up in Chrome when you're looking at it locally is to do the open with. I didn't do that and I got burned. So yeah, that kind of makes sure that everything's up. Okay, so I think this will be a good sort of like starting point for just looking at some other CSS issues because basically what I'd like to do here is I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the settings that make this full screen. And then we also kind of have to deal with the HTML in a slightly different way because the HTML is effectively overlapping the full screen animation in this case. So if you're trying to make an object that you can sort of click on and stuff like that, it's definitely worth sort of thinking about the difference between the two sketch models. So let me go ahead and open this up here in Sublime. Okay, so we have our sort of three files here at this point. And I think this should be okay. There's a couple of things that are different about this code as opposed to the code that we just worked on. And let me see if I can go ahead and just open the old code. There we go. So basically you can see the object where the P5 or this code where the P5 sketch has a small kind of bounding box or a small canvas is in a lot of ways quite a bit more straightforward. But you know, if you want that full screen effect, it's a thing that you can do, and we're going to talk about that. So if we come over here, what's sort of making this full screen is, you know, it looks very similar to the other one at the top where you include the sketch.js. The part that we are sort of using is we're using a section header in the HTML. And by placing the section header, by using this my background, which is just what I called the JavaScript sketch, it's allowing us sort of access to the entire window. The other thing that's really important here in order to make it full screen is this. So here you have to make it window width by window height. And that by doing that, you're basically writing like a tiny bit of like regular JavaScript, sort of intervening with JavaScript syntax to make this go full screen on the web. And as far as the canvas parent goes, I mean, that could be called anything. You just have to be consistent to the HTML here, where you're calling it for the my background. So yeah, so this is all, you know, kind of okay. Like, I think there's a lot of things going on with this page, but really maybe not much if you look at it from a certain way. If we go into Sublime, probably the first thing that I would do to this page, well, let me look at the CSS. Probably the first thing that I would do is give the page a right margin. So you can see right now the text is kind of like flowing into and over the window width boundary. And so it would be really nice if it didn't do that. I think that's sort of the first thing that kind of bugs me about this. So probably the thing to try, every CSS object has the option to be given a margin. And so in CSS, you can specify just margin. And if you do that, it will give you, the margin will be the same in different, you know, the top and the bottom and et cetera. So almost always people don't want the same margins for all measurements. So pretty much always, I would say, you're going to specify it as like margin left, margin right. And how do I know to sort of put that in this text-ish style that I made? Well, I'll show you in the HTML. So if we look at our HTML, it looks like all of the text is wrapped inside of a div. And the class is called Textish. And so I actually made a class for this. I literally made that up. You can make up class names. And then over here in the CSS, if you use the dot operator, you can reference a class name. So typically I work with classes when I have an HTML style that I want to apply, but I don't want to apply it to every item on a tag. So in other words, if I wanted to say like, I want this paragraph to be blue, but I don't want all paragraphs to be blue, then I would wrap a div tag around the paragraph and give it a class, paragraph 2 or whatever. And so that's sort of like a bottomless pit of complexity, for sure. But I think that it's definitely like good to be able to use that a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh our changes and just see how that happened. Okay, so it looks like we observe a right margin now, and that's pretty nice. Actually, another thing that I would like to do is I would like to push this whole text thing off the top as well. But for the top margin, also, I think you can see here that that Sublime is actually giving me like useful suggestions for my CSS. And that's, you know, just one of the kind of like things that you get when you use a full featured text editor, is you get that like hinting and color coding and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm going to go for margin top. And I think in this case, I'm going to try like a 100 pixel margin because I just don't want it as removed from the top, but I do want it to kind of bump down a little bit so it just looks nicer. I think another thing that people ask me about a lot, and definitely something that I wanted to kind of like, you know, make sure that I show you, is how to embed Google Web Fonts. So I'm going to find an appropriate Google Web font. And we're going to embed it in this page. Oh, hello, Google. Please give us a website. Yikes. Can anybody else get on the Google Web Font website? Maybe if I, okay, I kind of got on it like sideways. It just didn't come up right away. Okay, so yeah, we can definitely, I'm looking for a font that is not Wingdings. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use the search assistant. And let's see. Well, yeah, their website actually doesn't look like it's working all that really well. So I think I'm just gonna pick a font and like cut my losses and get out of here. So typically this classification thing is like how I would normally find fonts, but it seems like it's only offering me like 4 options, which is less than great. So this looks fine. This looks like a nice kind of bold. Ooh, lots of variants. Okay, so basically you find a font that you like on Google Web Fonts, and then you click get font. And then it's going to give you the option to download them. Totally not necessary. If you go to just get embed code, you can use the code in that way. So real quickly, I would take this stuff. It says embed code in the head of your HTML. That's totally true. So you should be able to come in up here into the heads portion. Definitely when you do this, be careful not to compromise the link to the regular style sheet that we're using. So you're basically adding an additional style sheet for this font, and that's the font definition. So it comes out like here and you just copy code. Yeah. So then the other section is the section for the CSS. And so basically we're gonna come in here, copy the code, and that is gonna come into the CSS. And so as far as, by the way, nobody has asked this, but as far as the CSS goes, it really doesn't matter what order you put stuff in. The only reason that that would matter is if you are calling one thing blue and then later in the HTML, you're calling the same thing yellow, then it's going to pick whatever is the furthest down in the CSS code. But like, that's like a super special, you know, set of circumstances. So for the most part, I would just tell anybody that the order of these CSS styles really doesn't matter. So I'm gonna save my stuff up here and see if there's any troubleshooting to do. So it doesn't look like there's any troubleshooting per se, but it also doesn't look like I'm getting the font that I want. And so probably I'm guessing that the big problem here is that here in the body tag, I'm using sans serif font. And so I would probably want to add Oswald, the font that we just downloaded, into the list of arguments for the font family. So I'm guessing that, yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. So now we have like some nicer typography and we can be happy about that. So the cool thing about Google Web Fonts is that you can see here, it's got font weight, and then font style, normal, and optical sizing, auto. So all that to mean that when you use a Google Web Font, it is actually kind of smart about zooming in and zooming out, and really like it function, and this is just my opinion, but something like a Google Web Font is going to function a lot better in multiple display situations. And that's one of the reasons why Google Web Fonts have kind of taken over like web typography. I mean, I still use Adobe Web Fonts sometimes, like I'm putting together my wedding website, and you know, Adobe had like some like nice traditional, you know, fonts. But Adobe Web Fonts are kind of a pain in the neck and they don't always work very well. So I would say for fonts in general, like you really can't go wrong with Google Web Fonts. They're super compatible, and they're really, you know, kind of resilient to multiple situations. So yeah, I think just to kind of prove my point, let's go in here to the HTML, and I'll go ahead and insert like a H1 header, and we can kind of just see how that works. So you can see that this div class textish, I'm kind of, when I make my header, so when I make my header, I'm going to make it inside the div. And could I set it up a different way? Well, I could. Let me set it up to go up here and we'll look at the difference. So there's going to be a little bit of a difference there. So, okay, big stuff. So you can see that there's a kind of like layers of difference here. And this is like a really good example of what is sort of called in the trade CSS inheritance. And basically what that means is that you are, when you make, you know, a CSS reference, it's going to inherit whatever else is kind of inside of it. So in this case, where we say, put the heading inside of Textish, it's actually inheriting, it's inheriting multiple styles. So when you look at this heading on the bottom, that heading on the bottom is basically saying, I'm doing exactly what you told me to do, which is I'm in H1, so I'm kicking myself over 200 pixels as for the margin of H1, but I'm also part of div class Textish. And so I get an extra 200 pixels and an extra 100 pixels to the top. So I think it's a really clear example of CSS inheritance. And so what does that mean? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. I would say if I were designing this page, I would probably just stick with it on the top. You could potentially go into the H1 definition and take away some of that margin, but you know, some of that kind of comes down to what else you're going to do on the page and how else you're going to use the code. So probably the most efficient way to kind of like make this look right would be to take the H1 out of the div and use the H1 independent of the div. And then we still have, it looks like a little bit of a margin issue. So I'm going to just check that out and see what's up there. So if we go to the H1 style, it looks like it's only got the margin for the left, but then Textish has a top margin of 100 pixels. So we could potentially, you know, back off on this top margin. I want to show you something that's super helpful. So this is kind of like really like the thick of what happens when you work with HTML and CSS. There's all of these like nesting things, and you kind of have to figure out like what you're dealing with. So if you go to the developer tools, there's like a really great way to kind of deal with that. So if you go to inspect elements and you just click on the element, you can see really clearly, if you click on the HTML tag, that this is, you know, basically what's happening here is the content is in blue and then the div is in orange. And so this is kind of just a way of helping you see like where those margins are and where you might need to shave some stuff off, you know? So does anyone else have any other questions? I feel like we've covered a lot and we should probably like, you know, have some tea or something. We'll be kind of full blast on this stuff on Wednesday too. And in general, I would say if anybody has any questions about the assignment, like I'm happy to, you know, answer that. I think the assignment really can just be like, you know, anything that you think is compelling. We've had folks do the assignment with like, you know, as you sort of pointed out, like a series of, hi, come on in. I don't know if we have any laser takers today.
No, it's just a weird day, no water, no.
No water.
Yeah, you know, there's no water in the building.
Where did this tea come from?
Don't know.
Must have been in.
We must leave the building, go to a different building.
Oh, really? Well, it must be, geez, is this like water from the pipes or something?
And they shut down the whole water to all the building, no notice.
Oh, great.
We're driving today.
Hmm. Well, I'm gonna shut down my recording here and, oh no, it's no problem. So we were just actually kind of getting to a stopping point. Yeah, so in general, y'all, I guess I would say,